express my sincere gratitude to the organizers for inviting me for making this presentation. Actually, as Nisha mentioned, I am also an alumni of the department, a proud alumni actually, a proud alumni of the Department of Sociology. Being a graduate in other discipline, for example, that is, I was a graduate in economics, and we had a bunch of students in 1999 and 2001 who studied at the Department of Sociology, and we are graduates of the different subjects. We are all graduates of different subjects, and just we synced into this particular subject of sociology, and we made it a career. And I'm very happy to say that most of the students, the classmates of my class, almost 7 to 10 of them have made into the teaching career. And one of them is Bushra Begum, another is Chitra is Nair, who is with me with our department, and many others are with the higher secondary school level teaching. So it's actually it was a great rearing and nurturing that we got at the department that made us a very successful in our teaching careers. And I am very fortunate to be a part of the batch in which majority are into teaching career as well. And my junior was Nisha was my junior there, and Pushpa teacher was my senior then. So I am just contextualizing myself in the space and in the space and the time in which I was there at the Karyotam. It was during the millennium, that is the birth of the 2K, 2000. It is the birth of the 2000 decade. The century was with the Karyotam campus, and we used to write 2K. 2000 for 2000 with the alpha numeral 2 and k, and there was a great deal of apprehension about what will happen about 2001. What will happen when the 2001 1st January? What will happen? And nothing happened. There was a prediction that Y2K program will be there, and lot of missiles will be auto launched because of the error in the calculation of the dates and time. And nothing happened. It was a daily normal day-to-day life carried on January 1st. So society, whatever happens, it happens. Whatever happens, it has an equilibrium. It will garner itself. Every troubles and apprehensions and whatever struggles we go through, we'll make it. We'll make it. And so what happens in this in between is what we studies. That is a study of sociology deals with what happens, what makes the people think alike and act alike, and how does a homogeneity arise. And we people used to do it in a very casual way. We never thought about it in a serious way. But when the machines are learning this, the same habitual behavior that the human beings have been learning for years, when this is taught to a machine, they are struggling. The machine learning and the artificial intelligence, they are struggling to make a machine learn how to behave in a normal way, the way we saw that the way we behave, that is a so-called normal way. So this normalcy, actually, the way we have to tackle our day-to-day affairs is a central core feature of sociology. And now, again, when we are moving into the area of qualitative research, we are making it more and more profound knowledge. The way people are acting, thinking, doing, the attachment of meaning, all are scientifically studied to understand the meaning that the individuals are giving to it. So it just, whatever we were doing just casually without any thought process given to it is actually being studied. Is studied, being investigated. We are trying to find out the underlying patterns of our behavior patterns. So the thing that seem very normal are now turning to be a focus point of investigation. So that's the beauty of qualitative research. The so-called simple things, the so-called conventional things or so-called day-to-day matters of life are being studied without disturbing the situation, actually, in order to understand the underlying nature and the patterns of it. And we, the sociologists, are the primary people who are dealing with this particular branch of study, that is the qualitative research. So we need to have an upper hand in this particular research of qualitative research, because we claim that the social situation, as we see, have to be studied, investigated, and of course, so For the same reason, we have to become an experts in the qualitative research. And it's actually a mixed, we are going into the path of a mixed research where we need to club in both the quantitative and qualitative aspects. So a thorough understanding of qualitative will only help us more in making the, I mean, unveiling the true nature or the patterns that is emerging in the society. So this few words, I'm placing myself in the context of the discussion today. That is the qualitative research. What is the role of documents? Okay, so we are starting with the today's topic, documentary resources. So every research starts from some from certain sources, and what is the source of documents, what is the role of documents in qualitative research. And I will be dealing with this particular lecture by dividing it into three parts. First part, I will be just recollecting on what is the salient features or what are the characteristic features of the qualitative research, why it stands apart, and why is it very unique and distinctive, and what are the specificities of it. So this will be the first part of the lecture, and second part of the lecture is dedicated to what are the different sources, what are the different types of documentations and documents which are available in the qualitative research. And the third part, we'll be dealing with the analysis, that is how the analysis qualitative data can be analyzed and what are the precautions and that we can take. This is just meant for a preliminary understanding. I'm not going to the depth of a practical work is not demonstrated here. Just by means of the words, I'm trying to communicate to you uh, what are the how qualitative research, why qualitative research to be done, and how it is done, and what are the precautions that we have to be very aware of before starting with this qualitative research, particularly with the point of view of the documents. So the qualitative research, just as very simple definition of qualitative research, you will be familiar with the qualitative research definition as you are on the third day of the workshop of qualitative research. So just the Creswell's definition in his book on research design, he has defined qualitative research as a means for exploring and understanding meaning. The core word, core term there is meaning. Meaning individuals or groups ascribe to the social or human problem. It can be a human problem, it is an human problem or a social problem which affects many people. So, what is the meaning that the people attach to the social and the human problem is what we meant to unveil by doing the qualitative research. So, it's a study of meaning, and the meaning is not in vacuum. It is a meaning is given by the individuals and groups. So,
Yeah.
first of all, we have discussed about the Creswell's definition about qualitative research, in which he has mentioned about the importance given to the meaning that the individuals and the groups give to a particular situation is studied in detail in the qualitative research. And next, of the same book, Creswell has identified what are the different worldview. He has defined its worldview, and other scholars has defined as paradigms, epistemologies and ontologies, etc. Creswell uses a concept of worldview, and in that he says that there are different types of perceptions of how people go to do about research. And in that he places that there are four types of paradigms, and the first one is a post-positivism, in which we are basically trying to collect empirical information for the validation of the theory. We start with the theory and we collect the data for validating the theory. It's actually a reductionism. We try to go to the core of the relationship. We try to find out the cause effect relationship. We try to reduce everything down to particular factors, and it is deterministic. It is deterministic in the sense it has a purview of what is the area of the research. It starts with the purview of the specific definition of what we are going to do and what is the objectives of the research. We start with it. So this is a post-positivist perspective of doing research according to Creswell. And second one, he says it is constructivism, in which you can only understand the phenomena, and this needs the researcher and the responder perspective. Both will have to sit together, and they will have to understand the meaning that they give to the particular phenomena. And then there is the background should be also very clear while doing a constructivist perspective research. So you have to understand the historical as well as the social background, and this will lead to an inductive perspective. Induction from the specific to general, you will be able to generate grassroots theories. So this is the constructivist paradigm that Cresswell is defining, and then we have another perspective doing research, which is advocacy, which is done for the advocacy and participatory purposes. But basically, it's for the purpose of emancipation and empowerment, and there also we need the collaboration of the person of the group among which we try to inculcate certain ideas, and it is always aimed at bringing about a change. So participatory research is very familiar, very familiar tool for us because we have been using it in sociological research, particularly in the area of tribal and rural research. We have been using the different types of participatory techniques like social mapping, resource mapping, the time using the analysis using the time and the space, etc. So this is a very familiar sort of research which is done by the sociologist along with the anthropologists as well. And next is the pragmatism. Pragmatism, according to the Cresswell, he says that in which we'll have to document everything which happens as the consequences, and it should be centered on a problem. A problem solution should be the main perspective which should be catered in the pragmatic research, and it should be taking into consideration the wide variety, the variance that there is in the society. Pluralistic point of view should be taken into consideration, and the real world, practical oriented perspective should be taken into consideration. So, just by having a bird's eye view of all the four paradigms, we'll be able to identify that qualitative research very well is placed in the three boxes. That is the constructivist perspective, advocacy and participatory, and the pragmatic perspective is very well catered to in the qualitative research. So Cresswell, he in his book has put forward the different dimensions and the paradigms, and he has identified that qualitative research will have a place in all the three paradigms of constructivism, participatory, and pragmatism. So this is the best. This is how the Cresswell starts with, and then I will also move into just what are the strategies of the qualitative research, which is identified by Cresswell, and he says it is one of the primary technique of inquiry in qualitative research, according to Cresswell, is ethnography, and which has a very quite unique pattern in which it is undertaken in a cultural group, which is largely intact, and it is undertaken in a natural settings. People go to the field rather than studying from a distant area. They are living in the field, and they will also be for a prolonged period of time. These are the distinguishing factors of the ethnography. So researcher is basically interested in identifying the general features and in understanding the uniqueness of the intricacies of the action and interaction and how the processes develops, and then the researcher is able to ground it and to make it very distinctive, and then the researcher is to contribute. Researcher can contribute it as the grounded theory. This is also a strategy of inquiry in quantitative research. And then we have case studies. Case studies, which is in which where the case study is made very distinct because of the in-depthness that is experienced in the cases. Because of the uniqueness or any salient feature that we take a case, and this case is studied in an in-depth way. So that makes the case study very interesting inquiry method in qualitative research. Now we move on to the phenomenological research, in which the same essence is, that is how the human experience are being described by the participants. What sort of description is given by the participants? That is what is given importance in the phenomenological research. There is, for example, in the gender studies, some of the books are termed as "there is nobody home," because there is nobody home. This is a particular term which is given by the housewives. When some person come to the house and they knocks at the door, a women member of the member will come outside and they say that typically it's the way of responding to any stranger. There is nobody home. So who is the person standing there? A woman is in front of the house, opening the door and saying the just remark that there is nobody home. So she is considering herself as nobody in that house. That is the meaning. That is the meaning that she self subscribes to herself. So this sort of meaning that the people give to themselves, as described by the participants, is given importance in the phenomenological research. This is another variety of inquiry which is done in qualitative research, and the next we have narrative research, in which the researcher is particularly depending upon how the story is being told, how the respondents or the people to whom we are inquiring is responding to our queries, and how they are telling their stories. And then after hearing all the stories, the researcher will be able to provide a chronological arrangement of how this has emerged, how this particular situation has emerged. So this is what makes it narrative research a very interesting inquiry in qualitative research. So the next from these are the basic first part of my lecture, that is a different type of qualitative research, and the different types of inquiries in qualitative research, and what is as such, what is meant by qualitative research, and where do we situate the qualitative research in the wide area of social science research, particularly from the different point of view, different perspectives, paradigms, where can we locate the qualitative research. So next is about how the documents, what is the importance of documents. Documents are very important when you do any type of research. It is very important when you do the quantitative research and also when you do qualitative research. But it is very unique the quality in qualitative research. Documents have a very unique role to play, because there is wide variety of data, wide variety of documents which we can harvest on. Particularly if you are doing about do a research in a qualitative way, you can make use of the immense number of documents which narrate or which tell which is there. It can be, sometimes it can be animate or inanimate, anything. It can also be a thing which has a story to tell. So this way, documents is very heterogeneous, and when particularly Bryman has identified in his book, he has identified different types of documents in which he delineates into. First one is the personal documents, in which he includes diaries, letters, and also as a visual form the photographs. And in the official documents of the state, but he has looked into the aspects from the perspective of the public inquiries and the government reports, which are published by the government after taking any report or on the basis of the inquiries, etc. These are the official documents. Then there are also official documents which are coming out from the private sources. For example, now there are corporations are there, banks are there, private sector banks are there. There are several trade and infrastructure business launching companies are there. So what are the official documents which is coming out from these private sources? And now the mass media outputs are also very prominent. Mass media in the sense print media and the visual media, print media, and also the mass media, the radio, television, films, etc. are all included in the mass media outputs. And again, he has also differentiated the virtual outputs such as the internet resources, in which we can include the social media resources, which is exploding at a very high pace, and also in the rate of the quantum. Uh, internet resources. Internet resources are increasing very much compared to all the resources which we have been there in the mass media for the last for 1 century. Now the virtual resources is increasingly becoming more and more predominant in our day-to-day affairs of life. And we as sociologists are also have to be very careful about dealing with the virtual outputs which we get by way of the social media outputs. So by identifying the sources, Brahman listed out these things by basically as documentary sources which we can rely on when we are doing qualitative research. And in personal documents, then in the same book itself, there is also a mention about in J. Scott. He has a book was written by J. Scott about entirely about how to validate, how to fix the validity of the, check the quality of the documents. And Bryman, by adopting from Scott, has mentioned about 4 types of criteria which we have to look into when as a researcher we are about to assess the quality of the documents. First one is authenticity, whether it is genuine or unquestionable, whether it is from a questionable origin, or whether we can do use it without any inhibition or without any fear. That is with regard to the authenticity. Then it is credibility, whether it is free from any error and distortions, etc., whether it is manipulated. All these things can be checked from the fact from by using the criteria of credibility. And next is the representativeness, which is typical, whether it is a representative, whether it is indicating a generic feature of a particular people, or a particular, whether we can relate it to a particular group or particular aspect, etc. So this is meant by representativeness. And what is a meaning? Is there any evidence where if we can understand the meaning of it? If it is abstract, if it's vague, we will not be able to decipher the meaning out of that. So when you are, so these are the four criteria that J. Scott has mentioned about assessing the quality of the documents. And all these four criteria are continuously used by Bryman also in while analyzing the documents. So these, as a researcher, we also should have we also should have an understanding about these four criteria when we are about to approach a particular document as our key resource. So this is the one. First one is authenticity. The next one is credibility and representativeness and meaning. And next, we are proceeding with the types of documents as mentioned by Bryman in his book. First one is about the personal documents, in which he narrates about the significance of diaries and letters and autobiographies, etc. And he says that, according J. Scott, in his book, Bryman mentions that there are at least two major concerns with respect to the personal documents. When you are using personal documents, you have to be very careful about two major issues. First is the factual accuracy of the reports, and whether they in fact is reporting the true, whether it is true to the writer itself, whether the writer's true essence is revealed to these documents. So this is some of the things which we'll have to decide on our own. As a researcher, we have the responsibility to check whether the documents, if at all it is personal, whether it is accurate, and at the same time whether it is representing the true feeling of the genuineness of the writer is evident in the document. So diaries, letters, and autobiographies are very well used by the researchers before undertaking quantitative research. And one of the very famous example is, next slide, is about the great book which is written by Thomas and Zenecki, which is the Polish peasants in Europe and America. It is a monograph of an immigrant group. This book, according to a review written by Anna in Sociological Research Online, which I got from online, it's an online book reviewing web page, from which it's a 5-volume book. It's a 5-volume book, and it's particularly written from the perspective of the second part of the volume. It includes basically 4 sets of peasant letters which are sent by the peasants to the and each set of concentrating on the members of a specific family. So it was basically the letters and the monographs which were provided by the Polish peasants were used to narrate the story of their adjustments and assimilation into the European and American society, how the Polish peasants were able to amalgamate. And in fact, when you read the Wikipedia page about the Polish peasants in Europe and America, you will come across a controversy. Controversy in the sense, the controversy which marked after the publication of this book was related to the genuineness of the data and the genuineness of the author as well. Who was the first author or who was the second author? All these sort of controversies later emerged. But this book is considered to be a very significant book with regard to the empirical research which is done under the Chicago School of Sociology, in particular related to the urban studies. And Chicago School is very prestigious school which existed in Europe, in America, which was doing studies about how the urbanism was developing in the great cities of America. So this is in fact also also it's a very important book regarding the studies of diaspora and immigration, etc. So this basically the whole book he is getting acknowledged on the basis of the personal documents that it has used tremendously. So this is an example. This is one of the eminent books which was written on the basis of the personal documents. So yeah, I thought of just sharing with you the significance of using the publication possibilities also there for you by using the personal documents. Next slide. So now we are moving on to the next part, that is this visual objects, like the role of photographs. Photographs is also a very important source in social research, but there are two different differentiations which is to be made with regard to the photographs. First is the extant photo, that is which is not produced for the purpose of the research, which is already there, which was already taken without any research in the research in mind. And then there is a research generated photographs which is produced by the researcher for the purpose of research. Exactly for the purpose of research, we have producing this research. So it's this photograph. So these are the two types of photographs which I mentioned in Ryman's book. And then here's also hinting towards what are the role that a photograph will have in research. And first of all, he's mentioning about the illustrative benefit of photographs, in which a photograph have a role. For example, it can help the respondent to recollect certain things. It can illustrate. It can pinpoint their direction when they feel that there is nothing more to contribute. We can make the session more lively by bringing to their attention a photograph. So they have an illustrative purpose by doing the research. And then the data, as photographs can also be used as a data, because when you are doing visual ethnography, in fact the story is being told entirely through the photographs. And it can also be thought as a prompts. For example, photos prompts talk about this. That is when the people say that I have nothing more to talk about that, or we have it's a certain aspects when people will not easily confess. So then also you can use it as a prompt to make the people speak about a particular situation that the photo actually picturizes. So these are the ways in which Ryman has also cited photo as a very important source of quantitative research. And next we are going to onto the state role of the official documents as a state and the role of the state as a source. Official documents, the documents produced by the states are also considered to be a very rich source of quantitative data. But most of the data that is produced by the state is analyzed in a statistical way, and it is provided in a statistical terminology and in a numerical way. For example, I have cited different type of sources like Census of India, Economic Survey, Economic Review Report, NFHS data. There is an open government data which is published by the government of India in a web portal. So when you are doing qualitative research, you can also use the same official documents of the state. From the numerical information you can cull out and you can create certain generic categories of qualitative information, so qualitative concepts can be created. For example, the domestic ratio of domestic violence can be generated from the NFHS data. The economic review data can be used for identifying the uniqueness of the labor, female labor, the mobility aspects, the migration aspects. All this can be discerned. Before going to the qualitative analysis, you can discern certain generic patterns and categories from the state, the official documents which is released by the state. And now it's mostly all the data available in the web pages, and most of the raw data is also available for the Census of India reports. Earlier we used to get only the most percolated fine data, which is analyzed to the optimum. Now the raw data, like the village level, ward level data, also we can seek those data from the census office. So by looking into the categories itself, the way it is structured itself, we can make a qualitative assessment of the type of the data that is provided by the state. Nowadays, the inquiry report, commission reports are made public Then environment and social assessment reports are also made. Currently, we are discussing about the DPR of the K-Rail. So the environment, the social assessment and environment assessment report of the Vilnius Harbour was also published. This was also made a very important document for the qualitative analysis. So this sort of the official documents of the state can be twisted and turned to match the needs of the qualitative researcher. Am I audible, Nisha? Is there
Yes, you're
Okay,
audible.
okay,
Yes.
okay. Thank you. So there is also private documents, private official documents. Like for example, there are immense number of annual reports, mission statements, press releases, advertisements, public relations material, company newsletters, organizational charts, minutes of the meeting, memos, internal and external correspondence manuals for new recruits, etc. There is immense number of materials are provided, are being now produced and disseminated by the public enterprise as well as private enterprises also. Particularly, if you look into the EPW, you can see a number of statements, annual statement of accounts are also published by the corporates in the prestigious journals and also in the newspapers. If you follow these carefully, you will be able to unveil, you will be able to decipher certain meaning out of the road that the private enterprise is having, particularly when the social responsibility, corporate social responsibility, when we are trying to look into the corporate social responsibility of the corporates, you can very well look into the chronology of how it emerged, what are the point of focus, how it has changed over a period of time. All this can be understood by looking into the official documents which are released by the private sector. So what we mean to say that is before going to the field directly and by studying, by understanding the performance of a private enterprise in a particular area, we can have a historical and a background analysis of the company's performance for the last many years by looking into all the details which is available with the company. Maybe it's online or you can go into the company and search for certain documents which they will be providing if they feel free to do so. So this also can be a very important source. And then we have mass media. Mass media is a very unique data source, which document source which we can access, and it starts from the newspapers, magazines, television programs, films, etc. And we have very prestigious publishing company. We used to have very prestigious publishing companies in India as well as all around the world. And now what happens is that they also have archives. They have archives and where they guides you to their archives and you can access any number of issues and volumes from about journals, anything from their website. And now, but the thing of very interesting thing which is emerging nowadays is that all the media is being controlled by the international corporations. For example, the film, the print, television, audio, music, etc., video games, internet, everything is being amalgamated. It's being amalgamated under one particular international corporations, and now six international corporations are having control over most of the media sources. That is something which is very interesting for a sociologist like us. For example, in national amusements, Disney, Time Warner, Comcast, and News Corp and Sony are the six major international corporations which have the control of all these media sources. So, what happens when our life world, when our decision making is all guided by the company, which have all these media to give you a meaning. So when the medium is the when the medium is acting as a medium is acting as a message. This is one of the important things which we'll have to be very cautious. So with the origin, the source of the mass media is also a very important topic, and which we'll have to ponder upon and we'll have to discuss and think about before using the document. So what is the before when you look into the source, it's just not enough that you look into the source of the company, but also you'll have to look into the large amalgamation under which this particular corporation is functioning or particular company is functioning. So this is also with regard to the quantitative research. I think mass media is also when you are using information from the mass media, this is a very important point which you'll have to keep in your mind. And then we have moving into the next part, that is the interpreting of the document. So with this, we are completing the second part of the lecture as well. As first part, it was basically about what is a qualitative research and what are the different worldview about the qualitative research and what are the different inquiries which is done in qualitative research. And the next part was about what are the main document sources of documents in the qualitative research. And in that, we have identified personal documents. We have identified the state produced documents, private companies and corporations produced documents, and then we have also looked into the mass media and documents which are produced in the mass media. And in that, in mass media, we'll also have to include the social media, which is virtual and cyberspace. Is also becoming, in fact, a very important source of data and documents. And now we are moving to the second part of the third part of the lecture, that is interpreting documents. Interpreting documents is very important. I have used two books for two authors to mention about the interpretation, how the interpretation is done. Reimer in his book says that the qualitative documents or the documents which have qualitative nature can be used for the qualitative research by using three techniques. This one is basically qualitative content analysis. Content analysis is a very oft-beaten method which is used by the researchers even before gaining such a momentum. Before the qualitative research gained such a momentum, we used to do content analysis. Content analysis is one of the primary means of interpreting qualitative data, particularly from the documents. And then we have semiotics, and then he mentions about hermeneutics. So these are the three basic methods for interpreting a document according to Brightman. And in that qualitative content analysis, he further cites Altehead, in which Altehead has defined about the different steps which has to be taken by a researcher before going into the content analysis, and also the certain precautions that they have to be taken. So the steps that the Altehead mentions is cited in Brightman's book, and this is the first step while doing a content analysis is to generate a research question. Before looking for the content, we will have to have a research question in our mind. Then we'll have to become familiar with the context in which the documents are generated, different types of documents. For example, if you do want to look into the newspapers, or you want to look into the magazines, or we have to look into the new TV news reports, or etc. So this sort of familiarity has to be made with all the different types of documents that we have, and we'll have to we will have to become familiar with a small number of documents. From a wider perspective, we will have to make ourselves with a smaller number of documents, which we'll have to focus on some of the documents, and then we'll have to generate some categories. From the documents, you'll have to generate certain categories. For example, if it is a murder, then you will have to identify what are the reasons, what are the family reasons, what are the economic reasons, or what are the contextual reasons for this particular disaster to have happened. So you'll have to generate certain categories, and then you'll have to test the schedule by using it and collecting the data from a number of documents. The schedule that you use will also have to be rechecked again and again, and whether it is a comprehensive one, whether we have to revise the schedule, and the same way the revision of the schedule will also be needed when the documents when you read the documents, you will understand the need for revising the schedule. So these are the steps mentioned by Altair in the book, in Brightman's book about doing qualitative content analysis. And next is semiotics. Semiotics is very familiar for all the sociologists, and it is a sign and a signifier. The basic objective of a college researcher is to find out the hidden meaning of the text. For example, if you are it is the day of this smileys and memes. So we always laugh at the troll, not just because of the aesthetic sense of it. Just we laugh at trolls because of the meaning that we attach to it. And for some persons it will be more hilarious because they will be able to identify it in a better way. So that's the beauty of the semiotics. So it differ from person to person, and how the meaning is being understood. The strength of the semiotics is that we'll be able to indulge into the very much details, keep moving us beyond, helping us to move beyond the orderliness of the everyday life. But at the same time, it's also a challenge for us because we have to search. Right? We have a multiplicity of meaning will be there, and we'll have to negate certain. There's certain, for example, we'll be having certain prejudices and we'll be having certain beliefs, and we'll have to negate our these prejudices and beliefs, and we'll have to give importance to the multiplicity of the meaning that a particular symbol seems to convey. So there is a beauty at the same time, it's a challenge of semiotics. And when you see the success of the trolls, which is appearing nowadays in the social media, I think that basically the human nature, all human beings have an excellent idea of how to uncover the meaning which is all explicitly mentioned to us. So semiotics is a great opportunity for the qualitative researcher to understand more about the daily so-called conventions, so-called normal life, and to probe more into the complexities and to the rareness of the life. So that is about semiotics. That is one of the important, interesting way of analysis, which is mentioned by Priman. And then you move on to the hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is actually is a very important, stronger perspective from with regard to the phenomenology and the theoretical perspective which we have in sociology. So all the sociology students will be able to identify the research, the humanist point of view. It is in this the emphasis is also given to the point of view of the author. The author is having a freedom to analyze the situation and giving a concentration to the sensitivity of the context as well. So this gives the researcher immense scope because he or she will be able to make use of all the amalgamated knowledge system that she is familiar with, and as well as to tackle with the correspondent what he or she is mentioning to you, and then you will be able to situate yourself in a unique place in which you will be able to identify your point of view, and as well as you'll be sensitive to the context in which the respondent is speaking, and then you will be able to interpret the situation in new meaning, and it will be a very useful thing for for any researcher to indulge in, and also to hand over to the next generation of research scholars or scholars who are emerging in this particular field. So hermeneutics also is very important way of interpreting qualitative data, and with the sociology have a very proud, we have a very unique branch of theory which we study about the hermeneutics and phenomenology. So it's very important for us to actually use it in the field as well. So next, we will going into the approaches. The Silverman also in his book has mentioned about approaches to study about the qualitative research. With this, we are winding up the session. So in the Silverman's book, he has mentioned about the two. It's about how the document is to be used. He mentioned that the document is to be used as a resource and as a topic, and as a resource. And when it is used as a resource, we are just looking into the document for identifying the evidences. We are just looking into the document for collecting evidences. We have to understand how many students are there in a school who are coming from coastal area. So we are just looking into the residence, the place of residence of the students from the school register, and then we are finding out that so much of students are from this coastal area. So we have earmarked them as our sample. So this is the purpose of document as a resource. For the sake of selecting a sample, we have used the document of school data book or school register, and thus the role that the document has to play, it ends there. It's just a document for us to, it is just a resource for us to collect the data. And then at the next level, it can also be an archaeological, we can take an archaeological approach adapting the discourse analysis of Fouquet. We can identify actually how the document is being created. That is, what are the mentioned, what are the areas mentioned in the school, what are the area or what are the focal point of inquiry in the school register. For example, what are the important variables of the socioeconomic background specificities that the school register collects about the students. whether if we most probably we can identify the basic social details from the social economic details from the school register, but there are other things we can will not be able to make out from the school register. We will not be able to make out the age of the parents or the type of family to which they belong, etc. We will not be able to find out from the school register. So school register has confined understanding about the children of the school with regard to the date of birth and the address and the parents' name alone. So there are a lot of information which would have been very useful for a scholar, like for a research scholar, if he just uses this register. But these are not available because of the way the register was constructed. So these are certain confines or certain restrictions which the documents provides. So the restrictions that the document itself have, we should also be able to identify. That is, we should be able to, as a sociologist or a particularly as a social science or qualitative researcher, you should be able to identify the undercomings or the shortcomings or the so-called defects or so-called what are the facts which we need further and what are the defects which has happened or what are the shortcomings which have happened in the construction of this document. So as a resource as if we are using a document as a resource, at the same time we have the obligation or the right to sincerely ask and inquire and to comment or to write about what are the lacunae or what are the shortcomings of the particular document as well. So this is what makes a critical analysis about what is already there. So this is the content. By analyzing the content, according to Silverman, document can be used as a resource as well as a topic. And next is a use. Use is that for the end purpose. Approaches basically most of the documents are used for used by the actors for attaining certain ends. It is for a purpose. For example, if you are having a database about the patients in a hospital, it is for the purpose. It is purpose for the further consultations and for further study on that. So every document that is collected is supposed to have a use. And in another perspective, document as a topic mentions that we have to focus about how the document functions and what is the impact of the document on the social interaction and social organization. So this document, when it helps the hospital administration in having a record of the patients, and when they are able to build a case history of a particular patient, the hospital administration is also at the same time liable to produce this document, to give this document for the sake of a larger social purpose, for the sake of a larger social policy making, etc. They will this particular administration, in addition to the purpose of just having a case record of the patients, a more holistic and a more comprehensive role that an institution can play is to provide for a wider function and for other social functions as well. So this is also a very important topic. So all the entire documentation. So a very typical example that Silverman mentioned is about the mental diseases. Mental diseases, that how the mental disease was constructed, how the case histories were produced, and how it was used by the hospitals and the clinics, and how it has been used by the corporates, for example, the medical pharmacy companies, etc., how it has been used. So this sort of things is also very important when you are, when as a qualitative researcher, the wider focus, the wider angle of the document has also to be identified. And next, Silverman in his book also mentions about what are the how we have, as a qualitative researcher, we have to be very careful. In for that, the mention is made about in the history of the socials, what are the fallacies that we have made, what are the mistakes that we have done. We have to learn from that mistakes. He is saying that the history of social science, there has been an undue emphasis on conceptualizing documents as inherent objects that need only to be studied in the content. Only the content we have studied. Most of the social sciences literature uses the documents for the content purpose, and we have not looked into how the documents have been assembled, how they have been used, and how they can function in the daily routine analysis of the interaction factor, how the documents has been used, or how the documents can be manipulated to such an extent of understanding the whole social interactions. So he says, David Silverman says that It is a general knowledge-based contextualized study of documents. So the study of the documents has been contextualized in the network of influence. It has to be visualized in a wide pattern of network. Whatever document you are coming across should be studied for its chronological specificity, for its geospatial locations, for the network's relationship in which it is appearing. All such things have to be studied and understood understood for a researcher to have a quantitative aspect of the document.